In this video, I will explain every ridiculous tariff the US has ever imposed. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff. The 1930 Smoot-Hawley Tariff might be the worst time tax in history. The stock market had just crashed, unemployment was skyrocketing, and Congress thought, let's make everything more expensive. This monster tax hit over 20,000 imported products with rates up to 1,700%. A $100 import could now cost $1,800 after taxes. Customs officials had to count the seeds in tomatoes because seeded tomatoes had higher taxes than seedless ones. Over 1,000 economists begged President Hoover not to sign it. He ignored them. The very next day, the stock market crashed again. Within months, 25 countries slapped their own tariffs on American goods. U.S. exports dropped from $5.2 billion to just $1.7 billion. World trade collapsed by 2/3. American farmers who were promised this would help them watched in horror as their overseas customers vanished. U.S. wheat exports to Europe fell by 60%. A tax meant to save the economy helped turn a recession into the Great Depression. Nice work, Congress, the McKinley Tariff. Why did my blanket just double in price? Americans were asking this question after the 1890 McKinley Tariff hit. This tax jacked up import prices by nearly 50% on thousands of everyday items. The tariff was so complicated that customs officials needed a 7,000-page manual just to figure out what to charge. A wool blanket from England? 120% tax. Pineapples from Hawaii? Double the price overnight. The most outrageous part was the presidential revenge section. It gave the president power to slap extra taxes on countries he thought were being unfair to American goods. No vote from Congress needed, just one angry president. Americans were so furious about their sky-high grocery and clothing bills that they voted 78 Republicans out of Congress in the next election. Politicians learned a hard lesson. Mess with people's shopping, and they'll make you pay at the ballot box. The Tariff of Abominations. A tax so bad, they called it an abomination. In 1828, Congress slapped a massive 62% tax on imported goods. Imagine buying a $10 imported shirt and paying $16.20 instead. Here's what happened. Northern factory owners wanted protection from cheaper European products, so they got Congress to tax almost everything coming into America. Southern states went ballistic because they sold cotton to Europe and bought European goods. Now their customers couldn't afford American cotton, and they had to pay way more for imports. South Carolina was so angry they threatened to leave the Union 3 decades before the Civil War. Vice President John Calhoun secretly wrote an angry letter saying states could ignore federal laws they didn't like. The craziest part? Politicians designed this tariff to fail. They stuffed it with such extreme taxes that nobody thought it would pass. But surprise, it passed anyway. This backfired plan nearly broke America apart before it was 50 years old. The chicken tax. We're in a chicken fight with Europe, so let's tax trucks. This perfectly sums up the ridiculous chicken tax of 1963. American farmers figured out how to make chicken cheaper. They started exporting tons of frozen chicken to Europe, undercutting local farmers. Europe fought back with taxes on American chicken. President Johnson's response? Tax potato starch, brandy, dextrin, and light trucks. Why trucks? To hit Volkswagen vans from Germany. The taxes on potato starch, brandy, and dextrin disappeared decades ago. But that 25% truck tax, still here 60 years later? This chicken fight completely changed what trucks Americans drive. Toyota, Nissan, and other foreign companies now build their pickup trucks in America to avoid the tax. Ford once did something truly bizarre. They imported Transit Connect vans with rear seats and windows, calling them passenger vehicles, to avoid the truck tax. Then American workers would immediately rip out those seats and recycle them. All this crazy business because of a chicken dispute from the 1960s, the Nixon shock. Imagine the president going on TV Sunday night and suddenly taxing everything America imports by 10%. That's exactly what Nixon did in 1971, and it shocked the world so badly that Japan named it the Nixon shock. After World War II, major countries agreed to fix their currency values to the US dollar, which was tied to gold at $35 per ounce. By 1971, America had printed too many dollars to pay for the Vietnam War and government programs. Foreign countries started trading dollars for gold, draining America's gold supply. Instead of fixing our money problems, Nixon basically took the global economy hostage. His message was simple: other countries had to make their currencies more expensive compared to the dollar, or this tax would stay forever. To do this without Congress, Nixon used a law called the Trading with the Enemy Act, a wartime law meant for enemies, not allies. The world panicked. Within months, countries gave in to Nixon's demands, and he dropped the tax after just 4 months. This short-lived tax completely changed how global money works, moving the world to floating exchange rates that we still use today. Nixon used a tariff like a gun to the head of the global economy, and it worked. The sugar tariff system. There's a hidden tax in your candy bar, and it's been there since 1984. America's crazy sugar policy costs you money every time you buy something sweet. Here's how it works. The government limits how much foreign sugar can enter the country at normal tax rates. Any sugar above those limits faces taxes so high, sometimes over 80%, that nobody imports it. At the same time, the government guarantees minimum prices to American sugar farmers. The result? Americans pay double or triple what the rest of the world pays for sugar. This costs consumers about $3.7 billion extra every year. That's about $40 per household annually just for sugar. This policy keeps about 4,500 sugar industry jobs at a cost of roughly $820,000 per job saved. Meanwhile, candy makers have fled the country. Lifesavers, that classic American candy, moved their entire factory to Canada just to escape high sugar prices. For every sugar farming job this policy saves, 3 candy-making jobs disappear. The most ridiculous part? This system exists largely because sugar producers donate about $50 million to politicians. Americans pay billions in higher prices, while sugar farmers spend millions to keep their sweet deal going. The steel and aluminum tariffs. Canada is a national security threat because they sell us metal. If that sounds ridiculous, welcome to the 2018 steel and aluminum tariffs. The administration imposed 25% tariffs on steel and 10% on aluminum imports, claiming they threatened national security. This created the absurd situation where Canada, America's closest ally and defense partner, was labeled a security threat for selling us metal. The justification? Any dependence on foreign goods could potentially be a security risk in a crisis. By this logic, almost any import could be considered a threat, giving the president unlimited power to impose tariffs without Congress. The effects were immediate. U.S. steel prices jumped by 38% in the months after the tariffs, far more than price increases in other countries. This helped American steel producers but hurt every industry that uses steel, from cars to construction to appliances. Studies found that for every job created in metal production, about 16 jobs were lost in industries that use these metals. One analysis showed that areas with many steel-using businesses saw job losses after the tariffs. Canada, Mexico, and Europe fought back with tariffs on American exports like bourbon, motorcycles, and orange juice. They carefully targeted products from politically important states and districts, creating maximum political pressure. The most absurd part was watching trade officials argue with a straight face that Canadian steel, from a military ally with shared defense industries, was a security threat, while exempting certain countries like Brazil and Argentina for political reasons. The French luxury goods tariff. Touch our tech giants and we'll double the price of your champagne. That was America's bizarre threat to France in 2019. Big tech companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon were using creative accounting to avoid paying taxes in countries where they made billions. France implemented a 3% tax on digital services revenue earned in their country. The U.S. response threatened 100% tariffs on French champagne, cheese, handbags, and makeup. This created a strange situation where the American government threatened to punish its own citizens by doubling prices on French goods to protect tech companies that it was simultaneously investigating for monopoly violations. The message was clear: only we get to regulate our tech giants. The threatened tariffs specifically targeted culturally iconic products rather than France's biggest exports. This cultural targeting was designed to create maximum political pressure. It meant American consumers of luxury products would pay the price for a corporate tax dispute happening across the ocean. The tariff threat was temporarily suspended when France agreed to delay collecting its digital tax, creating an uneasy standoff. This shows how modern tariffs often serve as weapons in disputes that have nothing to do with trade, with consumers caught in the middle. The washing machine tariff. Why did washing machines and dryers suddenly get more expensive? Americans asked this in 2018 after the washing machine tariff kicked in. Before the tariff, companies like Whirlpool complained that Samsung and LG were selling washing machines in the U.S. at unfairly low prices. The administration responded with a 20% tariff on the first 1.2 million imported washing machines, jumping to 50% for any beyond that. Within months, washing machine prices jumped 12%. Before the tariff, washing machine prices had been steadily falling for years. After the tariff, Americans paid about $1.5 billion more each year for washing machines. Here's the revealing part. Dryer prices increased by the same amount, despite not being taxed at all. This happened because people usually buy washers and dryers as matching sets, so manufacturers raised prices on both. This shows how tariffs create price increases that spread beyond the targeted products. For the approximately 1,800 jobs created in appliance manufacturing, American consumers paid about $815,000 per job. Meanwhile, both Samsung and LG sped up their plans to open washing machine factories in the U.S., making the tariff largely pointless. This case is valuable because researchers had clear before and after data showing the direct consumer impact. It confirms what economists have long argued. Tariffs are basically a tax paid primarily by domestic consumers, not foreign companies. The Canadian lumber tariff. Housing prices were already sky-high in 2022. Lumber costs had tripled. So what did the government do? They doubled the tax on Canadian lumber to 17.9%. This fight over lumber has been going on since the 1980s. America says Canada cheats by owning most of their forests publicly. Canada says that's just how they manage their forests differently. The crazy part is that America has lost this argument 4 separate times in international courts. The World Trade Organization and NAFTA both said these lumber taxes are wrong. But America just ignores these rulings and keeps the taxes anyway. The timing couldn't have been worse. The National Home Builders Group found this tax added about $18,600 to build an average new home. That's a lot of money during a housing crisis. Who gets hurt? Home buyers paying record prices, construction workers when projects get canceled, companies that use lumber for their products. Who wins? Just American lumber companies, which employ way fewer people than construction does. This tax shows how trade policies often help small groups with political power while hurting everyday Americans. And both Republican and Democratic presidents keep doing it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment below. See you next time.